I am California of the past.
I am California of the past.
I am California of the past.
My name is Terry LaCroix Jr. I'm the former mayor of the city of Alameda, and I'd like to share with you some of the memories of the tragedy that happened on February the 7th in 1973, the largest and I think the most loss of life of any catastrophe the city of Alameda has ever had. On that particular day, I was at a mayor's conference in Piedmont, California with a reporter from the Alameda Times-Star, and we were returning from the meeting around 8 o'clock at night. We were driving down Santa Clara Avenue going back to City Hall with Everett Johannes, the reporter, and we noticed all the traffic that was assembling around Chestnut and Lafayette Streets and people running. And I told Everett, I said, "What's going on? Something's wrong." And immediately we started to run towards the fire, which was hundreds of feet in the air, and there must have been at that time hundreds of people running towards the same scene. Our home, my wife Pat, and our children's home was at 920 Grand Street. My wife in that particular evening was at school at Alameda College taking the upholstery class. My daughter Sharon was home sitting with our youngest daughter Rebecca and Sharon's boyfriend, who is now our great son-in-law, of course, but they remember a large boom, and our home was rather a big home, and it shook. They ran to the site, and they were concerned about my father, Terry Sr., who lives at 2014 Central Avenue. Already the fire department had started to assemble. They were hooking their hoses up. The first responders, I believe, were from the Pacific Avenue and Grand Street Fire Station. Shortly after that, of course, all the fire responders from the city of Alameda assembled at the site of the catastrophe. All of the services turned out. The police department were there, the fire department from Treasure Island, the fire department from Naval Air Station in Alameda. Soon the sheriff's departments came from the city of Oakland and assembled at the scene. We probably had 400 or more service people there, fire, police, sheriffs, and representatives of the air station, their fire departments. The fire burned for probably 3 or 4 hours until they really got it down to the point where it was smoldering. And they were able to, even at that time, start to rescue some of the people whose bodies were in the apartment. I think the last figure I heard was that 39 or so people were injured on site at the fire. Some of those were firemen, some of those were civilians who had volunteered. A lot of them, of course, were people who had been in the apartment house at the time of the fire. Nevertheless, it was a tremendous catastrophe. Of course, the fire was horrendous, did a tremendous amount of damage. The largest conflagration, as I said, that we've ever had in our city. The day after the fire, at 9 o'clock in the morning, the Navy called an inquiry at the Naval Air Station in Alameda with the commanding officer of the 12th Naval District, the commanding officer of the Naval Air Station himself, and Doug Weller, our city manager, Fred Cunningham, the city attorney for Alameda, and myself specifically requested that we be part of that hearing, because what we wanted to do was to clear the Naval Air Station in conjunction with the city of Alameda as having any part in the failure of that aircraft or the catastrophe which came about because of its crashing into our city. A lot of people thought that particular aircraft had come from the Naval Air Station in Alameda. And at that time in our city and around the Bay, there was some controversy about the air station. the overflights of the aircraft, the Vietnam War. So right away there were going to be a lot of people who would accuse the air station of having overflights over our city, and this was maybe one of the aircraft that had caused that catastrophe. That turned out not to be true, of course. The plane in question was on a mission from Lemoore Air Base in Southern California, and he and his fellow pilot, two jets, were on their cross-country training flight. They were flying back to Lemoore when they crossed over the Bay Area. But during the inquiry and later on, it was ascertained that yes, there was no fault with the Naval Air Station. The planes had never been in communication with the air station, and it was determined that yes, they were in touch with Lemoore. They were flying back to Lemoore, and Alameda and the Alameda Naval Air Station had nothing to do with that particular incident. They concluded later on in the inquiry that perhaps they had an oxygen fire aboard the aircraft. They think he might have smoked in the aircraft at the time, which probably either killed him at the time or rendered him unconscious. In any event, the plane came at a very, very sharp downward motion, almost directly into the apartments on Central Avenue. If it had come in at a glide angle, it probably would have taken out more buildings than it did. Nevertheless, it was a tremendous catastrophe. To commend the people of Alameda, to commend the firefighters, the police, the civilians, all those who helped, it shows what people can do when you have a catastrophe in your community, when people pull together and help each other. The number of people that turned out in Alameda at that time to volunteer were amazing in numbers. They were young teens, they were adults, helped firemen pull hoses. They were controlled very well by Alameda Police Department. They didn't cause any confusion with the people who were working on the fire, but they assisted them. And Alameda can always be very, very proud of that. One of the wonderful things that happened in our city at that time is the people of St. Joseph Parish, St. Joseph Church, which was 2 blocks away on Chestnut Street, and the school being there, they opened the auditorium on Chestnut Street and set up a command post at St. Joseph Parish, where the Red Cross had set cots up. They served sandwiches and coffee, anything they could do to help people within the community who needed help. That was a command center for the fire site. People across the street on the east side of Central Avenue opened their homes to people. They served sandwiches, they served coffee, they served soft drinks, they gave any assist they can. They let people use their bathrooms in their homes. It was amazing to see what people were doing to render and assist to what was going on. The people of Alameda have always been one to come together in catastrophe, but we'll never forget the conflagration, the tremendous fire, the loss of life, the great work our service people did, fire, police, volunteers, Red Cross. We can always be proud of that. And we look back now and hope that, as I said, I speak to you in the year 2009, that we never have something like this happen to the city of Alameda again. Thank you.